about the 221G situation. And I wonder if you can shed some light on that for us.
Yeah, I think I can. So just for those of you who aren't familiar, nurses historically, when their I-140s are approved and their priority dates are current, they go to embassies, Manila obviously being the most heavily used one. And there's some background checks and a few other administrative processes that are done there at the U.S. Embassy in Manila. But ordinarily, then the visa is issued shortly after the interview is over. Starting in December of this year and through the end of February, we saw as an industry, and that was whether you were going to Kinetics or going with another recruiter, or whether I was your attorney or any of the attorneys, it was across the board. Nearly every nurse who went for an interview in that December, January, February timeframe received a 221G letter. And the 221G letter was issued somewhat oddly, in fact, very oddly. It was very unprecedented that we went from a universe where nearly 100% of the visas were approved to nearly 100% of the visas received these 221Gs. Towards early March, I was aware, and a lot of other attorneys I think were aware, that conversations were happening with the Department of State. I didn't have any particularly myself, but I was working with some folks who were. And the Department of State in early March let it be known amongst the lawyer community that the problem was solved with what was happening at the 221Gs in Manila. That's the good news. However, the Department of State officials that I was interacting with did not go as far as to say that there was necessarily something wrong between December, January, and February, and that's certainly their prerogative. Having said that, it's pretty uncommon for an official in Washington, D.C. to directly say that some of its lower level employees maybe did something wrong. But we were given the impression in early March that the 221G problem is solved on a going forward basis. Now, is that true? On one hand, I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because from March through really now, there have been very few visa appointments held in Manila because of two reasons, really. One, in February, the visa bulletin retrogressed back, and that meant that a lot of folks who might have ordinarily been able to get their visa appointments couldn't because they were no longer current. And for a second reason, the COVID crisis obviously kicked in mid-March, and the embassies in Manila, the embassy in Manila and around the world, they all shut down and they're really only open for emergency reasons. So for the last 3 months, virtually no one, has been able to obtain a visa appointment for those two reasons. And so I guess the first takeaway of this is that my impression is that once the embassies start opening up in June and into July and the visa appointments for new cases get scheduled, that I expect that we will see those visas issued and that this 221G phenomenon that happened in December, January, and February will go away. Now, I can't say that's for sure. This is just what I've been told, and I want to be clear, what I'm hearing is really secondhand. It's not my primary communication, but I am hearing it through multiple channels and from multiple people that I talk with that are connected with the State Department. So that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is, what about all the folks who were issued 221Gs in the December, January, and February timeframe? And what we're really doing here at our office is we're putting those into sort of two categories. The first category is some of those folks were issued 221Gs and their cases were actually sent back to the Nebraska or Texas Service Center. And then the second category is another group of nurses were issued 221Gs, but their cases remain at the embassy in Manila. And so if you're in this group of December, January, and February 221G cases, the first thing you want to try and figure out is, was your case sent back to the USCIS Service Center, or is your case still sitting in Manila? If it's still sitting in Manila, we are working with our clients to liaise with that embassy in Manila. We're actually not going to start this till after June 1 because and into June, because the embassies aren't quite open just quite yet. And so there's no point flooding them with emails because you're just not going to get answered. In fact, the few emails that we've sent over the last 3 months, almost all of them a few weeks later, we just get a stock email back from the embassy just simply saying, we're busy, we're closed, we're only handling emergency issues. So what I would say is, if you think that you are current and you think that your case is still at the embassy in Manila, work with your lawyer in order to contact the embassy to try and shake that case free for another interview, or ideally to just get the visa issued. And so that's the plan. Whether that works or not, we will be a lot smarter in about 30 days after the embassy is open. If your case was sent back to the service center, you can still do that, try to contact Manila, but I suspect you are going to receive an email back from the Manila embassy saying that your visa was refused and your case has been sent back to the service center. And then you're going to have to work with your attorney and your U.S. employer and your recruiter and maybe even get some congressional support, because what we're going to have to do is get the service centers to reissue the approval notice to send it back to Manila in order to get the visa ultimately issued. So that's it. Those are your three categories. You're either, you have an I-140 that's about to become current that actually hasn't gone to the embassy, and we are cautiously optimistic that your visas will be issued this summer. Second category, a 221G was issued, but your case was not sent back to the service center, in which case we're suggesting you work with the embassy in order to try and get your visa reissued, your visa appointment reissued. Third category, your case was sent back to the service center. You can try to reach out to the embassy, but I suspect they're going to tell you that your case has been sent back and there's just nothing administratively they can do right now, in which case you'll need to work with the service center to get the I-140 reapproved and sent back upstream up to the embassy.
Okay. Thank you for that, Chris. I think that was a really clear, very, very clear answer to the question. And I think hopefully that will help a lot of people that have been caught in this unfortunate situation. It's a very difficult and frustrating process. And what happened in Manila, added a whole nother layer of frustration. Then you put on that the visa bulletin plus COVID, just incredibly nightmarish situation for people who've waited so long. So thank you for that answer, because I think that gives a lot of clarity. If anybody's watching who's in that situation or knows of somebody who's in that situation, please make sure that they have heard this advice from Chris Musillo. I think that was really great advice, very clear, very concise, and giving us at least a path to action for anyone in this unfortunate circumstance. So thank you for that.